even on that job, like, I can't buy anything. I can't afford the rent these days.
In Northern Ontario, homelessness was growing really quickly.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister.
The dream of living and thriving in Canada is slipping away for millions. By 2025, an estimated 5 million people could be facing a stark reality, packing up and leaving the place they've called home. Sounds surreal, doesn't it? But this is no fantasy. It's happening. In a dramatic turn, Canada's immigration system is undergoing sweeping reforms, set to reshape the futures of international workers, students, and even long-term residents. The government's ambitious plans, once heralded as a solution to labor shortages and economic growth, are now under scrutiny. What changed? Housing shortages, overwhelmed healthcare systems, and crumbling infrastructure have painted a grimmer picture. Imagine being one of the 1.6 million Indians in Canada, engineers, IT professionals, healthcare workers. The stakes are higher than ever. Will they navigate these changes, or will they be forced to leave behind years of hard work and dreams? Stay tuned, because this is more than policy. It's about survival, adaptation, and the fight to hold on to the Canadian dream. The new immigration era. In October 2024, Canada unveiled a bold plan to recalibrate its immigration system, sending ripples through the lives of millions of temporary and permanent residents. These reforms signal a new era, where the balance between welcoming new residents and safeguarding Canada's infrastructure takes center stage. Canada's new immigration levels plan introduces drastic changes in permanent residency targets, designed to alleviate systemic pressures. Here's how the numbers break down. By 2025, the ambitious target of welcoming 500,000 permanent residents has been scaled back to 395,000, a sharp 21% decrease. The decline doesn't stop there. Projections for 2026 lower the figure further to 380,000, with an even steeper drop to just 365,000 by 2027. According to reports from BBC News and Canada Visa, these numbers reveal a significant shift in immigration priorities, leaving many to wonder what's driving this downward trend. This represents a staggering 105,000 fewer admissions by 2025 compared to earlier commitments, shaking the foundation for those relying on immigration pathways to build their futures. Why this sudden shift? The answer lies in the challenges Canada faces as a nation. The rapid influx of immigrants, previously celebrated for fueling economic growth, has strained the country's housing, healthcare, and infrastructure systems. Public sentiment has shifted, with growing concerns about the affordability of living and the quality of services available. By scaling back immigration targets, the government aims to slow population growth, stabilize infrastructure, and buy time to address the housing crisis, a move framed as a necessity rather than a choice. A closer look at temporary residency. The ripple effects of these reductions are not limited to permanent residents. Temporary residents, a group essential to Canada's labour market, are also bearing the brunt of these changes. By 2025, temporary resident numbers are expected to shrink significantly. By 2025, the number of temporary residents is expected to decline by approximately 445,901, followed by another drop of 445,662 in 2026. However, 2027 offers a glimmer of recovery, with a projected increase of 17,439. These figures, sourced from Fragomen, highlight a dynamic shift in temporary residency trends, sparking questions about the policies shaping these changes. These reductions are aimed at aligning immigration with Canada's capacity to provide housing, transportation, and public services, but they come at a cost. Workers, students, and families who have integrated into Canadian society now face a precarious future. Housing, the core of the debate. A key driver behind these reforms is Canada's housing crisis. With demand for homes outpacing supply, housing prices and rental rates have soared, especially in urban hubs like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. The government estimates that reducing immigration levels could shrink the housing gap by 670,000 units by the end of 2027, a critical step toward making housing more affordable. While these changes are being framed as a step toward sustainability, they represent a seismic shift in Canada's immigration story. For temporary residents and international students dreaming of long-term opportunities, the road ahead is more uncertain than ever. The impact on international students and workforce. Canada's immigration reforms have created ripples across its educational and labor landscapes. For international students and workers, this shift isn't just a policy change. It's a profound recalibration of their dreams and futures in the country they've come to call home. Canada has long been a magnet for international students, with over 800,000 students enrolled annually. However, the new policies may dim the allure of the Canadian dream. International students in Canada are navigating an increasingly uncertain future. With fewer pathways to permanent residency, those relying on post-graduation work permits, PGWPs, now face intense competition to stay in the country. This isn't just their struggle, it's an economic one too. Students pour billions into Canada's economy through tuition and living expenses, fueling universities and local businesses. A decline in their numbers could lead to significant revenue losses. Beyond the dollars, there's a human cost. The stress and anxiety of an unclear future are casting a shadow over their academic dreams, making their journey more challenging than ever. A precarious residency. Temporary foreign workers have been the backbone of Canada's industries, from agriculture to technology. Yet, the reforms hit this group hard. Temporary workers in Canada are facing a harsh new reality. Many who dreamed of turning their short-term jobs into permanent residency now find themselves stuck with shorter contracts and fewer chances for renewal. This shift is causing ripples far beyond individual lives. Employers in key industries are growing anxious about finding enough skilled workers to fill critical roles. For the workers themselves, the uncertainty is even more crushing. With fewer options to secure long-term stability, many are left clinging to permits that may never be renewed, leaving their future hanging by a thread. Balancing workforce needs with public sentiment. Canada's workforce growth heavily relies on immigration. Despite the new policies, Canada's revised immigration targets are raising concerns about the country's future. Fewer immigrants means slower population growth, which could strain the labor market and hinder economic expansion. This comes at a critical time when Canada's aging population is already tipping the scales, with more retirees than active workers. Without enough new immigrants to balance the workforce, the country risks deepening this imbalance, potentially threatening long-term stability and growth. The role of public perception. Public opinion has played a significant role in shaping these policies. Concerns over housing affordability, healthcare accessibility, and infrastructure strain have driven calls for reduced immigration levels. However, critics argue that the government must also focus on structural reforms, like building affordable housing and expanding public services, rather than solely reducing immigration. Despite the challenges, Canada remains a land of opportunity for many. The government has emphasized that the new policies are part of a broader strategy to balance sustainability with growth. Initiatives to increase housing supply, improve healthcare capacity, and invest in infrastructure are underway, aiming to create a more stable future. What's next? The final chapter of this series will explore the long-term implications of these reforms on Canada's identity as a welcoming nation and how they could reshape its role on the global stage. Before we dive into the next part, take a moment to hit that like button. And we put our best efforts to create our every single video. If you're enjoying it, subscribe to Global Insight and support our journey to bring you more captivating stories. Now let's keep going. Things are about to get even more exciting. Canada's global reputation and identity. Canada has long been seen as a beacon of hope, a country with open arms, welcoming those in search of a better life. But the recent immigration reforms raise an important question. Will Canada maintain its image as a global leader in diversity and inclusion, or will these changes tarnish its reputation? For decades, Canada has been synonymous with multiculturalism. Its immigration policies were a model for other nations, balancing economic needs with humanitarian responsibilities. But as the world watches, Canada's reputation is under scrutiny. Canada's shifting immigration policies are drawing international scrutiny. Advocacy groups and global organizations are voicing concerns that the focus on economic priorities over humanitarian values signals a move toward exclusivity. Meanwhile, the competition is heating up. Countries like Australia, New Zealand, and Germany are stepping up with attractive pathways to residency, aiming to lure skilled immigrants. As these nations rise in the global talent race, Canada risks losing its once strong edge, leaving many to question its future as a top destination for immigrants. The impact on refugees. Canada has been a lifeline for thousands of refugees fleeing war, persecution, and natural disasters. However, the reduced intake targets could have devastating effects on this vulnerable group. Canada's reduced refugee intake is raising tough questions about its global responsibility. With fewer opportunities for resettlement, countless individuals may find themselves without hope for a new start. As a key player in the international community, Canada has long been seen as a leader in addressing the global refugee crisis. However, scaling back these efforts could signal a troubling shift, prioritizing economic goals over humanitarian values and challenging the country's reputation as a beacon of hope for those in need. Multiculturalism in question. At its core, Canada's identity is built on the foundation of multiculturalism. The country's strength lies in its diversity, with immigrants enriching the cultural fabric. But how do these reforms affect that identity? Canada's decision to cut immigration targets could have far-reaching effects on its cultural fabric. With fewer newcomers, the pace of cultural integration may slow, risking a decline in the vibrancy and richness that define Canada's diverse communities. Over time, this shift could impact future generations, who may grow up in a less diverse environment, potentially altering societal values and perspectives. While the reforms aim to address domestic concerns, such as housing and public services, critics argue that these issues require systemic solutions, not a reduction in immigration. Experts argue that Canada doesn't have to choose between supporting immigration and addressing domestic challenges. Innovative solutions, like investing in affordable housing, infrastructure, and healthcare, could allow the country to sustain robust immigration levels while meeting the needs of its citizens. Collaborative efforts with local communities and immigrant advocacy groups are also key, working together to craft policies that balance public concerns with inclusivity could help Canada remain a welcoming and forward-thinking nation. Canada's path forward. The reforms mark a turning point in Canada's immigration history, but the story isn't over. As the government fine-tunes its policies, the world is watching how Canada adapts. Will it continue to lead as a nation of inclusivity, or will it retreat from its global role? Canada's story is complex, but what about the countries breaking boundaries and thriving against all odds? Discover the fastest-growing economies in the world, a journey into unstoppable growth. Click now to explore.